Hello there, and welcome to episode 24 of the Unqualified Opinion Sports Podcast, wherever you may be and however you may be listening. I'm your host, as always, Marko Yerkovich.
And I'm Will Barman, and we've got some banging rugby action for you today, eh?
And I'm Tim Seipel. On today's episode, we will be discussing our reaction from the new NFL CBA proposal, our NBA power rankings, and much more.
All right, let's get into the episode with that aforementioned NFL CBA proposal brought forward by the NFL owners group. So the proposal has a number of things, but most importantly, it was approved by the heads of the Players Association by a 6-5 vote, meaning that it'll now go to an all-hands-on-deck player vote of over the 2,000 players in the league. So just quickly, some of the things that are being voted on: a 17-game regular season, a 3-game preseason, expanding the playoffs to 14 teams, a roster expansion from 53 to 55, raising the minimum player salary, and an increase in player revenue sharing. So overall, what are some general thoughts, Will, that you have on this new CBA proposal?
I don't really like anything that's in there. I mean, shortening the preseason makes sense, but a 17-game regular season is absolutely pointless. Expanding the playoffs, I don't see that either. I think it's fine the way it is right now. I don't think there's a lot of room for more playoff games. Roster expansion, 2 spots. I generally like that. Gives some more players a chance. It's shrinking the practice squad, or moving the practice squad up gives you a chance to hang on to some more young talent too. I'm in favor of raising the minimum player salaries. But if you look at what some of the stars are saying, there's a lot of criticism over this one. Russell Wilson said NBA and MLB are doing it right. All NFL players deserve the same. I vote no. Apparently, Aaron Rodgers was very, very outspoken against this. Marquise Pouncey, I'm not even going to read over that because he just had a profanity-laced rant in his truck about it. And then J.J. Watt's against it. So it's a lot of the criticism seems to go against the 17th game is the main thing I'm seeing.
Tim, your overall thoughts, just from your perspective at least?
From what I see from the overview of this new CBA agreement is that it's all about business for the NFL. It's not about the players, and they're not putting players first, especially in this situation. The only way I can really see a 17-game season being viable is if they cut down the preseason games to 2. I do agree that shortening the amount of preseason games is important for the NFL moving forward because of the amount of injuries that we saw this past year, especially in the preseason. And since there's nothing really writing on the preseason, we'd prefer if there was maybe less preseason games going on. And that's the only way I can really see a 17-game season being somewhat okay. But overall, it's not really beneficial for the players as this is a long season. I did see someone talking about it. I believe it was on First Take where he was saying that what if they took the 16 games and players could only play 16 games of the all 17 so that they'd have to put in more people and have a mix, which for me just doesn't make any sense. So personally, not really a fan of this CBA agreement, mainly because it does not protect the players first, as the MLB and the NBA have done well. And this is just another loss for the NFL for me.
Well, I think overall, the main sticking point is the 17-game regular season. I think they're paying paid, and the revenue sharing is based on what you would receive in a 16-game regular season, which I think is definitely true. But I think the main thing that they should attack is the preseason games. If they want to expand the regular season and expand the playoffs, then get rid of the preseason as a whole. You know what? They have OTAs and summer camps and all of this stuff that helps them prepare. I don't think, just based on injury risk, just it's so unnecessary to have the preseason. I think that's a big problem for me, at least.
I'd argue the preseason, we don't need as many games, but it's necessary to a degree because, I mean, we all like Hard Knocks here. But that's the best way to see how those roster bubble guys are going to be able to stick, and if they can actually.
Yeah, but if there's no preseason, they can have actual practices. They can spend more time.
Well, if there's no preseason, then there's no in-game situational awareness. How
And there's
will a
less
player
chance
do
for
well?
injuries.
You can practice
There's
all
less
you
chance
want,
for
though.
injuries.
You can practice all you want, though, but you're not going to see how a guy's going to react until he's in a game that you can't really simulate that much for.
But you
More
know what?
stuff
You can also simulate him getting injured. I just don't think there's a necessity for those copious amounts of injury opportunities in completely meaningless games.
I mean, it's not meaningless to the bubble players.
It's not meaningless if it's my chance. If this is the chance between me feeding my family and me playing football for a year, or me working at a Buc-ee's gas station, it's not going to be meaningless to me. The preseason, that's the best way for a roster bubble guy to have a future, to have a career in the NFL.
Yeah, but if you expand practices and OTAs, I think that is a place where they can do that. They're doing that already.
Now, that's another thing, too. The goal, another thing I did see they added to the agreement was they're reducing the number, according to ESPN, they're reducing the number of practices, padded practices a week from 16 to 28. I think that's actually a tremendous step in the right move.
28 to 16.
28 to 16, yeah. That's a pretty good move in the right direction for what the players want. The players also wanted an extra bye week, even without another game. They want another bye week to have more time to prepare and relax, and they're trying to...
And recover from the injuries they're suffering in games.
They're also trying to lower the amount of international games and make sure they're not going to have to go from an international game to a Thursday night game or something. So there's some good stuff here, but overwhelmingly, I don't think they need a 17-game season, and I don't think they need an expanded playoffs.
Right. There's a reason why the NFL plays once a week, and it's because of the toll that it takes on the body to play such a physical sport. I mean, even though you may not be injured, you may be on the verge of injuries just because of how physical it is and how often you have to play. So I think to a certain extent, 2 buys in a season would be beneficial. And maybe if you want to add the extra game then, it might make a little bit more sense. But for me, if I was a player, I would push for at least getting an extra bye if we were going to go along with a 17-game season.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the way to go. I don't necessarily think the playoff expansion would be detrimental because that's more opportunities for players to make, playoff claims and get, better opportunities in free agency. It's more revenue for the teams. It's 2 more games because, again, these games are not going to be a new round of the playoffs. They're not going to be a play-in game. They're just going to be a 3rd game added to each day of the wildcard weekend. So there'll be 3 wildcard games per conference and just only the number 1 seed gaining a bye instead of the top 2. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I'd like to know more about how they propose to do it first. I mean, on the surface level, I'm like, oh, sweet. As a Detroit Lions fan,
it's just 3 wildcard spots instead of 2.
If they were adding more wildcard spots, we might have made it a couple of these years.
Yeah.
But no, I just want to see their full proposal for the playoff expansion and make sure they're not trying to tack on an ungodly amount of extra games or something. I can't remember.
No. That's all it. No. Will, this is all it is. It's just adding 2 additional games. It's 7 teams per conference. There's 3, wildcard games per conference. So you'd play 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5, and only the 1 seed gets a bye. It's just adding an extra game.
I think to a certain extent, if you look at this past season, the race for the 2nd seed was very competitive in both conferences. I mean, you have the Saints, I believe it was the Packers, and I think there may have been another team in the mix, but you had quite a few teams in the mix to get the 2nd seed. And then along in the AFC, you had the Patriots and the Chiefs fighting for that 2 seed. And if you take away the value of the 2 seed, which is right now,
but you increase the value of the 1 seed, though.
You do increase the value of the 1 seed, but usually the 1 seed is the team that sticks out, the team that has been probably...
Well, that's an assumption you're making about the standings of that season.
If you look back at Baltimore, for me, it's more on the fact that there's a lot of value in the 2nd seed right now, along with the bye, and if you increase this, it just takes away the value of the 2nd seed. Obviously, you face the worst team in the playoffs on that side of the conference, the 7th seed, but you still you don't get a bye.
We're getting teams important, like the Titans that will come in and beat you in those games. I don't know. I agree, Tim. I think the 2nd seed should remain a bye because it adds a great element of drama to the season, especially at the end of the games. Having a limited amount of wild cards too, I think, makes the end of the regular season a lot better. I mean, think about Tennessee and Pittsburgh how much they had to go at it to try to keep
Yeah,
that
but then
wild
you're
card
just going to
spot.
expand that race to teams like in the AFC, like you mentioned. Well, Cleveland would have been more into that race, and other teams that were vying
I
for
don't
that
want a
7th playoff spot.
that in this instance would allow Cleveland to be competitive for a 7th spot. They weren't good last year. They weren't a team that I want in the playoffs.
The concern is that you could get a situation like the Eastern Conference in the NBA where your bottom 2 seeds, like in the NBA, your 7th and 8th seeds in the East are a joke. You don't really want to see a joke team get in the NFL wildcard round. You don't want to see the Browns show up and just get smoked.
That's just not good for the league.
That's not good for the league. It's not good for the playoffs. It's not good football to watch.
But what I would also contend is, especially in the NFC, let's take the NFC West, for instance, a really stacked division where you're finding teams like Seattle, like the LA Rams, and the San Francisco 49ers. They're all really good. They have to play each other, and they knock each other down by having to play each other. But then it makes it more viable that those talented teams could still make it into the wild card spots, right? LA would have been the 7 seed in the NFC. They would have been a solid team to play.
If they had played better during the regular season, it would have been an issue. And
I don't see an issue with expanding it by one team per conference.
I don't think it benefits it a lot.
If you're the 2nd seed, would you rather play the Cleveland Browns and probably win, but maybe get shocked, or maybe lose a bunch of stars?
Well, here's
or
the
would
thing,
you rather have a bye week?
This is going to happen because the players want this, and they're going to increase the revenue. The teams are going to absolutely.
Well, then that just makes it more about business than anything else. It's an extra game so that maybe the NFL can make more money.
That's what this is all about.
Money. Well, that's what the CBA is all about.
It's absolutely.
That's why I think to a certain extent we're all. I mean, what Will and I are saying is the 14-game team playoffs is not as viable as what we have right now.
But it's also favorable to the players.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. To me, it's not favorable to the players because you give a team like the 2nd seed, they no longer have a bye, they no longer have a rest week, which is important and can be a huge advantage, especially in the game of football, where, like I previously stated, there's a lot of contact and a lot of injuries just from overuse.
Yeah, but I think what you're coming to is players will be in favor of this particular piece because they want to make the playoffs. They want to be on a successful team. It's more viable for teams to be able to say, hey, we made the playoffs. I think this will be one of the few points that I think the players would actually be in favor of. But I think as a collective, and I think a lot of the players in the league, and Will talked about some higher ranking players, this is going to be extremely unfavorable amongst the players and will most likely get shot down in the vote. So with that, we're going to move into our NBA power rankings. We took a break from this for a while since the NFL playoffs had kicked off, but now that we're done with that, we're back on that. So at 10, we've got the Utah Jazz. They're 36-21, 4-6 in their last 10. Your guys' just general thoughts on Utah, how they're doing right now.
So they've kind of taken a downturn, and the big news today, actually, a couple hours before this, is Mike Conley's going to the bench from Royce O'Neal now. They've decided Conley wasn't really adding to their starting lineup much. They played a lot better with the Joe Ingles, Donovan Mitchell point guard split. So they're just going to try to run with O'Neal on the wing, and hopefully Mike Conley off the bench works out better for him.
Yeah, I mean, the Jazz, they're still a dangerous team, but they've definitely been on the downtrend. I mean, if you look at their past 10 games, they're 4-6. That's pretty clear. They haven't been performing at the level that they have been used to. And so that's why they obviously dropped in the NBA power rankings.
All right, so 9, I have a team with a pretty similar record. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they're 36-22, but 8-2 in their last 10. They almost dealt Gallinari to the Heat at the trade deadline, but since not doing that, they've pretty much caught fire. Chris Paul, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and the Thunder are looking to position themselves higher up in the Western Conference.
And it was a fantastic move for them to keep Gallinari. They already have a ridiculous amount of first-round draft picks. They got in that Paul George deal and the Russell Westbrook trade at the Rockets as well. There's no need for them to get rid of Gallinari because they can make a decent playoff run right now. Chris Paul has obviously been phenomenal this season. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander looks like the future. I just want to shout out quick to Steven Adams because if you're looking at playoff matchups, he's one of the rare centers. He's not going to blow you away on offense. He can't really shoot. He's a screen setter. He's an old school center. but he's capable of defending guys like Anthony Davis
Right, exactly.
about as well as anyone in the league. So he's going to be a major playoff asset.
Yeah, at least they would have someone to match up against Anthony Davis. So now moving on to number 8, we have the Miami Heat, who are 36-21, 4-6 in their last 10 games. Obviously, since adding Iguodala and Jay Crowder at the trade deadline, they've struggled, but they're still looking to integrate them into the system, see how big of a role they need to play. But I think Miami will iron that out and move up in the power rankings in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I'll give them a pass. They've been without Jimmy Butler for a little bit. They've been without Tyler Hero for a little bit, and he is probably one of my favorite rookies to watch this season.
Yeah.
So they've missed 2 key pieces, and they've lost a couple close ones too. I'm not too concerned about the Heat. I agree with you, Marko.
Yeah, they're down in the rankings right now, but they're definitely going to be climbing back up within the next few weeks when they get Butler back to full health and Hero as well.
Yeah, and something I would also like to say, I think 3 through 8 is pretty close on these rankings, or
Extremely
4 through 8.
Close.
Yeah, it's pretty close. So number 7, I have the Houston Rockets, 37-20, 8-2 in their last 10. Small ball, it's been working, but can it work long term? That's the big issue. Your thoughts, Will?
Not a ton for me to say here. I mean, I've talked about it a lot. I'm not a believer in the small ball because I guess to dip it back to Steven Adams, he's even an offensively limited center like Steven Adams has the potential to just go nuts on your team. I don't buy it in the playoffs.
Tim?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I stated from the beginning of this trade when we saw the trade the Rockets made, I actually love this. And I love the small ball movement. At least they're committing to a game and to a style of play, which a lot of teams are still trying to figure out to a certain extent. But for me, they're 8-2 in the past 10 games, which really shows the effectiveness of this small ball group. And obviously, they're going to have their damages, their issues because they don't have a real big man. But for me, I love this.
All right, so 6, we've got the Denver Nuggets, 40-18. 7-3 in their last games. Jokic and a pretty decent supporting cast. They're staying right up top in the West, hanging on there. Will, you have anything to say about that?
ESPN's got them at 3. For my part, I like where you have them a little bit more, Marko, and I'm a huge Jokic fan. I like what the Nuggets are doing generally, but the more I see him play, I'm just still not sure if I buy them as a legitimate championship
Right, exactly.
contender.
Outside of Jokic, who's your 2? Who takes the game-winning shot? Who can step up? If
Jamal
Jokic,
Murray's he's shown flashes of being that guy, but he hasn't done it consistently.
And then who's your 3?
Gary Harris has been non-existent.
Yeah.
Honestly, I thought Malik Beasley.
It's a miracle that Denver is.
Fine.
I mean, again, as you said, we're recording this Wednesday afternoon. It's unbelievable that Denver is still the 2 seed. That's a testament to how good Jokic is.
And,
but they're right on. Who's right on their heels? Number 5, the LA Clippers, who are 38-19, 5-5. Just slipping. I just kept them ahead of Denver because I just trust, as we mentioned, where's Gary Harris? What is Jamal Murray doing? I trust LA Stars a bit more. They'll get this figured out. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they'll get it figured out. The Nuggets' strength is they're just a great basketball team. The Clippers I wouldn't call them a basketball team as much as a collection of basketball talent. But I think with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, they'll pull that all together at the right point. Watch Landry Shamet. He's really been stepping up a lot.
Yeah.
He's improving his game. I think he'd be a major clutch performer in the playoffs because he's defending well. And Patrick Beverley, as much of a meme as he was last time for how good he played on defense, he's still not really a great offensive piece. So
yeah, Shamet could be the guy in that spot.
Guy.
So 4, we've got the Toronto Raptors, the team that no one really, we understand there's no superstar on that team, but just a lot of talent to go around. Pascal Siakam has really stepped up. And at the guard spot, Fred VanVleet and Kyle Lowry are, they're just charging ahead with this team. Even without Kawhi, they're still a threat to win the Eastern Conference, which is very impressive. At 3, you've got the Boston Celtics, Toronto and Boston neck and neck for that 2 seed. And that's really important because, whoever gets that 2 seed would get the Nets without Kyrie and KD in the playoffs. Boston 40-17, 8-2 in their last 10. Your thoughts on Toronto and Boston?
Toronto is probably the best coach team in the league. If you look at the players who they're getting quality minutes from, Chris Boucher, who was a G Leaguer for a number of years. Jared seems like a fan at least. Chris Boucher, Terrence Davis, he was undrafted by choice. He'd rather sign a undrafted free agency deal than be a G Leaguer. And then Matt Thomas, who's a sharpshooter from overseas. the guys who are coming in and playing big minutes from the Raptors are completely random cast-offs, and Nick Nurse has coached this team up. Also, Paul, you can get your little fire sound effects here because I got a hot take for you. Pascal Siakam is a superstar in our league. Absolutely a superstar, no doubt about it.
And I'll say this, if Pascal Siakam is a superstar, Boston has found their own superstar as of late. Jayson Tatum has been playing ridiculous in this. He's averaging 30 points a game in the month of February.
They're both budding superstars.
Oh, for sure.
Budding.
Pascal's there,
but they
Tatum's
aren't there
budding.
yet.
Pascal's
they aren't
absolutely
there yet. I'm going to die on that.
Pascal's
argument.
carried a team for the whole season. He was a big deal.
Anyone can carry a team in the regular season if you just show up every night.
Pascal Siakam stepped up in the playoffs.
Show up every night.
Pascal stepped up in the playoffs. He was a big contributor there. I'm not saying Tatum won't be a superstar. I think he's getting pretty close. However, he still does have the comfort of having Jaylen Brown, Gordon Hayward, Kemba Walker, who's a better superstar.
Because he's got a better team around him. Yeah. But I think
Siakam's there. Tatum's close.
All right, fair enough. 2, we've got the Lakers. There's not really much to say. LeBron, AD, this team is very solid, but they are not the same team without LeBron on the court. 44-12, 8-2 in their last 10. But, without LeBron on the court, what is this team?
I don't know, dude, but Caruso bodied Lonzo so hard.
That was
last
so beautiful.
Night. It was ridiculous. No, honestly, I don't think they're that good of a team at all without LeBron. Anthony Davis is obviously a superstar, but he didn't do much with the Pelicans. And if you take LeBron out of the equation, there's no guy. I'd say Drew Holiday was the best co-star that Davis had in New Orleans, and there's no guy even on Holiday's level if you take LeBron off the roster. So if they lose LeBron, I don't expect anything from the Lakers, but LeBron's leading the league in assists right now.
That's pretty impressive.
And if he finishes the season as the assist leader, he'll be the oldest player to start leading the league in a major category like that since Jerry West.
I mean, yeah.
So,
but John Stockton did it even when he was much older.
For the first time.
That's unique that he's really getting that part of his game going. Number 1, we've got the Milwaukee Bucks. They're 50-8 overall, 9-1 in their last 10. Just the absolute epitome of a strong regular season team. They've got length, they've got scoring across the board, and they're extremely deep. I mean, at times, if they really need to, they can go 11, 12 guys deep. Really great team.
There's not a ton to say about the Bucks right now. They've been that dominant. If you look back to last year's playoff performance, I think they've added pieces to help where they kind of failed there. Robin Lopez adds a lot of toughness that this team didn't have in the playoffs last year. DiVincenzo has really looked like Bleacher Report a couple of weeks ago had him as a potential 2025 All-Star or something. And
he's a top 5 defender right now.
DiVincenzo's nuts. I love DiVincenzo. I'm excited to see where he goes in the future. And then they've got Wesley Matthews for some more shooting. The Bucks did a good job improving their team without blowing the cap up so they can try to keep Giannis around, which has been an unfortunate black cloud over the whole season, I'd say. Every time I try to enjoy Giannis being Giannis, you have to hear some Heat or worse, Warriors fan go on their Instagram message and be like, oh, it's going to be so awesome when we sign Giannis.
I mean, there is a potential that if he doesn't sign the Supermax and, Milwaukee knows he'd be gone in a year for nothing, that, the Warriors could package Andrew Wiggins and their 2 future lottery picks, their own and Minnesota's next year, and some other stuff to get Giannis. But that is only if Milwaukee does terrible in the playoffs and Giannis, out of character, says that he doesn't want to stay in Milwaukee, which I think there's a very low probability of that. He doesn't seem like that kind of guy. He doesn't
seem like a follower for one thing.
LeBron didn't seem like that in 2009, and then you see what happens when you have a lack of playoff success and you're carrying the whole franchise.
That's fair, but LeBron also did have one thing to watch too. Is LeBron did have a bit more time and a lot less to work with.
Actually, LeBron had 7 years until he went to Miami. Giannis is now going to be, next season would be his 7th year in Milwaukee. So it's about the same time frame.
Giannis has better pieces. He's not playing with
Mo Williams,
Drew Gooden,
Zildrunas Ilgauskas.
Shout out to one of your
I don't even know.
East European boys like yourself. I think it's Zyandris Ilyakis, something like that.
I think it's Zildrunas Ilgauskas. I think I got that last one right. All right, well, with that, we're going to move into some college basketball time with Mr. Jared DeHaan making his return to the show. Jared, how are you doing?
Doing great. Great to be back.
Ready for some bracketology?
Oh, yes, I am.
All right, so Jared, let me know, what are your number 1 seeds right now as things stand in college basketball?
So as of today, like the difference between the number 1 seeds and number 2, it's so close. This has been a weird year of college basketball where you never know what's going to happen. Right now, my number 1 seeds, I have a pair of Big 12 teams in Baylor and Kansas, and then 2 mid-majors in Gonzaga and Dayton.
So now at the number 2 seed, who do you have going there?
I currently have Kentucky, San Diego State, Florida State, and Maryland. San Diego State was the number 1 seed, but they just lost at home to 14-14 UNLV. That just bumped them down to a 2 seed. They've had a great season, not a great loss, but I still have faith in them. They could still make it back up to that 1 seed.
So you're talking about the very slim margin of error, the very slim difference between a 1 and a 2 seed. Is there any team right now that is locked in as a 1 seed, regardless of how terribly they could finish their regular season and conference tournament?
Right now, I think Gonzaga is my one that I think can stay a number 1 seed. They're done playing BYU and St. Mary's, I believe.
You're correct, yeah.
So they're done with both those
outside
teams.
Of the tournament.
Outside the tournament. And I believe they're 27-2. That's a pretty good record. I think they have 1 or 2 possible regular season games left. I'm pretty confident that they can keep that 1 seed. And then Dayton. Like Baylor and Kansas, it's tough because they still have the Big 12 conference tournament. It just kind of depends on how that all shakes out. I think one of them will keep that 1 seed, and I believe one of them will fall to a 2 seed.
And then so now going to the opposite end of the seeding spectrum. So what are your last 4 teams to get a bye?
So the last 4 byes, I have 2 Big 10 teams in Indiana and Rutgers. And then again, I have 2 mid-major teams in Utah State from the Mountain West and Rhode Island from Atlantic 10.
Okay, and so those are teams, again, that are just getting in right at the buzzer. So who are your last 5 in? And notice we're saying 5.
So I have Oklahoma from Big 12. I have Providence, they look like they were out of contention after the non-conference slate. But they're currently sitting at 4th in conference. They have shocked me. They have jumped all the way up into my tournament predictions when I thought they had no chance. So they're probably, out of all these teams, the one that's really surprised me the most. I also have NC State, who just had a bad loss to North Carolina. And then UCLA, who has now won, I believe, 5 straight after being just 1 game above 500. They're now 17-11. And then for some reason, somebody put Nebraska in. I'm sorry, but at 7-20, I don't think that's going to be enough to get them in.
You know what? You can get the automatic bid. You got to win the conference tournament. Get the automatic bid. There is still hope for the Cornhusker fans out there.
Shining moment, baby.
12 straight losses. We haven't won since, I don't even know when the last time we won it was, when we were on break. You never say never. Probably not going to happen. Sorry, folks.
And then, unfortunately, we've got a few teams that are just missing out. Who are your first 4 out of the tournament?
My first team out is Stanford. Stanford looked not like a lock, but they should be in. But they've struggled the last couple weeks. They were at 15-4. I believe they're 19-9 now. They've kind of been struggling. Richmond, another Atlantic 10 team. They just don't have enough good wins. They had a win against Wisconsin early in November. Other than that, it's just been kind of mediocre. Memphis, who after losing James Wiseman, they have some decent wins, but then they had almost a 40-point loss to Tulsa. That looks horrendous, even though Tulsa is doing a lot better now. That still is a major, major red mark on their resume. And then also Wichita State, another team from American. They just don't have enough powerhouse wins to get into the projections today.
Yeah, so again, this is all very fluid. A lot of things can happen in this last week or so of the regular season, and teams are really vying for that seeding, can move up and down by a few spots based on their outcome in their conference tournament. Jared, any last things you want to tell us? Obviously, March Madness is ramping up. Any final predictions or anything important you want to tell the audience?
Another prediction I'm going to say is that Obi Toppin from Dayton is going to be the National Player of the Year. He is the reason they're a 1 seed. I watched him play on TV in Maui Invitational. From then on, I've been a believer in Obi Toppin. I think he's going to win. And then I also think that 10, possibly 11 teams from Big Ten will end up making the dance. Minnesota or Purdue, they're both at 500 right now, but they have difficult stretches to end the regular season. If they can put a couple wins together, I think they can get ahead of a couple of these mid-major teams.
Okay, so also we want to let you guys know, of course, always subscribe to us on YouTube. That is much appreciated, but make sure you go check us out and follow us on Instagram, because in the next few days, we're going to have some information. When March Madness comes up, we're going to make a bracket and we're going to have a giveaway based on who can fill out the best bracket. Again, this is all tentative. We'll have some more information as the tournament approaches. But again, just remember to subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Instagram. Make sure you get that very important information. You might win some money if you can fill out a good March Madness bracket. All right, that'll do it for episode 24 of the Unqualified Opinions podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, check us out Spotify, and follow us on Instagram at unqualified_opinions_UNL for updates on our latest content and uploads. For the whole crew, I'm Marko Yerkovich. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you all next time.